Hello everybody, welcome back to my little slice of classic car heaven in the north of France. Today I'm trying to do something a little bit different for you. I'm going to recreate a retro twin test. Now in 1955, Citroen introduced the revolutionary and iconic DS. That quickly went on to set the standard in terms of styling and innovation in the automotive industry. Even today, it's heralded as an example of how to really move the game on. Well, the DS wasn't for everybody. It was a very large car and it was very expensive, especially thanks to the horsepower tax that the French government had introduced a few years before. Well, by the early 1960s, France's other national automakers, that is to say Peugeot and Renault, decided they wanted to try and take Citroen on. And these are the two cars they used to do that. We have here on my right the Peugeot 404 and on my left the Renault 16 TX. These were both slightly cheaper alternatives to the DS that were intended to offer a luxurious driving experience to those who couldn't quite afford that gorgeous Citroen. But these two themselves make for a very interesting comparison. Here's a couple of things you need to know. Peugeot were the first to release theirs. The 404 came out in 1960 and was produced in passenger form until 1975. It had a life after that, but for the purposes of this comparison, that's when it ended. This is one of the very last being produced in that final year of production. Now this car was styled by Pininfarina and was the first collaboration between Peugeot and the famous design house. Like many cars of the time, a number of different body styles were offered, including a pickup for commercial use, which is something you may have seen with the earlier Peugeot 203 that I reviewed before. This one is a four-door saloon. It's very safe, three-box styling with a traditional boot. It's got bench seating in the back and it's got a 4-speed manual transmission being driven by a 1.6 litre engine at the front, which drives the rear wheels. The person buying this sort of car would be someone that had bought Peugeots all their life. Someone that was quite mature, someone that's quite sensible. It's your pub manager's equivalent car, really. An English person would probably have been buying a Triumph or perhaps a few-year-old Jaguar, if you want to have a sort of reference there. Much more radical is this Renault. The Renault 16 was introduced a few years later in 1965. Renault really took their time with the design of this car, and it is radically different to the design ethos that built the Peugeot. Rather than offering a number of different body styles as was traditional, Renault eschewed that and offered just the one. This is, I believe, the world's first 5-door hatchback. Renault decided that they would try and appeal to everyone with the same car. It also offered a very high specification for the time. Now, this car is also from pretty much the same time as this one, yet this, the TX luxury model, has such luxuries as electric windows and central locking and a 5-speed manual gearbox, also mounted on the column like the Peugeot. These are very unusual things in Europe, you must understand. I know that in America, column-mounted shifters are fairly normal, but over here, they aren't something that you tend to see even on cars of this period. Now, the idea with the 16 is that the interior is highly customizable and configurable, and you can basically make whatever you want from it. It aims to take on the DS in terms of technology, but from a different perspective. Rather than having a super advanced hydropneumatic suspension like the DS does, this counters by having a much lower curb weight. This is over 200 kilos lighter than the DS, a very advanced aluminium engine. So the engine in this, despite it also being a 1.6 litre, is around 30% lighter than the one in the Peugeot and makes similar power. They're both around the 70 horsepower mark. More interestingly, this is also mounted in a very unusual configuration. It has the engine in the front, driving the front wheels, but the engine is here behind the front axle with the gearbox ahead. This kept the center of gravity very close to the middle of the car and gave it, one would hope, a little bit more of a sporting characteristic. The downside, though, was in much more difficult maintenance because that engine is a lot harder to get to. There's other unusual things about the 16 too, like for example, the wheelbase is not the same on each side of the car. It's 70mm longer on one side than the other. The rear wheels don't line up. And that's because they had to do that to fit in the torsion bar rear suspension that they used. And the idea was that this car should have a ride comfort roughly approaching that of the Citroen without the need for any of its complex systems. Oh, this is a new one on me. The safety belt is just hooked in down here. I really don't trust it to save me in an accident. Okay, now apparently reverse is down here. Yep, it is. Okay, pretty friendly. And this is the problem I have with some of these. They're not like an H-pattern gearbox. They're not all in the same place. I am going to roll down the window. You might not... I can't roll down. I'll roll down this window a little bit. You can probably see I'm quite hot and sweaty. It's very humid here today. Okay. Now, what's the bedding? My friend here does not appreciate the fact that I've never driven this car before, and he's driven it for 20 years. So he is in the Renault 16. I'm going to drive this for a bit, then we're going to swap. Oh, this is quite easy. Again, like the 203, massive steering wheel. Okay, all right. Nice with these older cars, they're quite light. So this one weighs about a ton. All right, this is actually not too bad. It's probably one of the easier cars I've driven this week. Let's try for third. No, it's there. Okay, so the push back. See the difference between this and the 203. I think the 203, the gear stick just rested between first and second. In this, it rests between third and fourth. I'm quite enjoying this. The whole week has been really rather remarkable. It's been an eye-opening experience. I certainly wouldn't want to have a crash in one of these. But driving it is pleasant. It's a change of pace for me. Everything here happens, as you could see earlier, very differently. Let's keep it in third. Okay, the car. It's comfortable. It moves well enough. It seems to pick up easily. Controls are all very light. You can tell that this was definitely designed for an older buyer. Everything here is simple but quite nicely laid out. This does have the feeling of a more premium car, a more luxury car. These fabric seats feel like the seats in a really old Mercedes. That's what it feels like to me. There's no rev counter. It's simply temperature, battery gauge. Oh, sorry, there's not temperature. There is a battery gauge, there is a fuel gauge, there is a speedo, and there is a clock. I have here heater controls. There we are, we're into fourth. And we're trundling along nicely. I'm doing 50 kilometers an hour, which is the speed limit in town. Loving life. Brake pedal is reasonably soft but quite predictable. Shift lever is very, very easy to manipulate. It feels reasonably large, but truthfully by modern standards it isn't. Of the standards of the time, it was a medium to large size car. The 16 looks small from where I'm sat, that's for sure. I should point out at the present time it is basically rush hour. I've really picked a great time to perform this retro twin test, but this isn't anywhere near as hideous as I thought it would be. I didn't have the best of times with the Beetle, but all the cars I've driven since have actually been much easier. Now I'm now heading on this road called the 999. Oh joy! That's exactly what I want to see in a road name. Top speed of this car, allegedly, about 100 miles an hour. It's quite quick, really. I won't be testing that. No way. The clock's got up to 190. They also say it's 11 o'clock. It's not. See, France, during the time that these cars were produced, had a similar problem to England, and arguably a problem that both countries have now. Many of their roads are simply not of very good quality, and therefore a lot of focus was made not on necessarily improving the performance of the engine, but on improving ride comfort and handling. And by doing that, by improving the suspension and so on and so forth, you make the car faster. Because if you can cross ground quicker and more comfortably, well, you've improved performance. We've got a nice bit of airflow moving through the car now, so cooling me down a little bit, and I'm starting to relax. It's very important. A vehicle like this should always make one relaxed, and I can already feel it working its magic. Not so sure about the blue interior, but hey ho. Oh, he's going for it in the 16. Let's try and keep up with him. Some cows down there. Plants over there. Thinking of becoming a tour guide out here. I can feel a lot of movement. There's a little bit of a wobble through the wheel. Could really be anything. I like the view out the front. I can see very clearly those lights. It's actually a view very much like the one you'd get out of a classic 911. Visibility is very, very good. Instruments are quite clear. The speedo is rock steady. That's very impressive. A lot of these older cars, over time, the speedo starts to go a bit wibbly. I'm intrigued to see. Now, I have already been a passenger in the 16, but I'm intrigued to see what it's like. See whether it feels noticeably more modern than this in its design, its construction, the way it's been thought about and built. It's a very modern car compared to this, but they're still both very old cars, so it'll be good to see which I prefer. And there will be a winner in this one. I'm not going to do any of this, you know, everybody gets a badge for participating stuff. No, I'll decide a victor. This car immediately feels more upmarket. I have modern style automatic seatbelts. Okay, didn't hit the post. Got off to start. That's good, that's good. Okay, into second, not too bad, not too bad. The speed demon in front of me is running away. Let's try and keep up with him. Now this car, to recap, same size engine, similar power, an extra speed in the gearbox, a different layout, so it's mid-front engine really. The engine is right down here, driving the front wheels. It does feel smaller, sprightlier than the 404. I asked him if he thought it was sportier, and he simply said, which I don't know, I think it is. I think it is a lot sportier. Gear shift is just as easy to use. For a vehicle manufactured 43 years ago, very impressive. Crikey, he doesn't hang around. swear he must have been a racing driver and he's not telling me. Or maybe he just loves these old cars. I can kind of see why. One interesting difference, the indicator in the Peugeot is on the right, the indicator on this is on the left. One lovely thing about all the vehicles in this collection is they're all used on a pretty frequent basis. They're not perfect at all. Plenty of dings, dents, scratches, little rust spots and things on them, but they're certainly loved. They're used for what they're intended. And this car has a lot of electronics and things in it. It's got that rear wiper, which is on an unusual arrangement here. Dash is a little fancier. I have a rev counter, for example, so again, you can feel this was a little bit more upmarket. He told me a story of when he was a younger man, he wanted his father to buy one of these, but his father didn't want to. Too modern, I think, too sporty. Let's see if I can find fifth. Oh, there we go, fifth. Not reverse. Happy days. I think this car certainly does feel like a step forward. Which one I prefer, though, is something I'm having a more difficult time working out. Oh, I can see actually there was once a shift pattern engraved onto the lever here, long since gone from thousands and thousands of uses. And the accelerator pedal is stuffed right over, so it's almost touching the firewall down here. So I'm very glad that I've got my driving shoes on, because otherwise you'd be in danger of operating the brake pedal and the accelerator at the same time. Wow. Well, that was a near accident. Old lady in a Clio coming to a roundabout, indicating right, went straight over. I feel like I'm in some sort of chase scene from a French cop show from the 60s. It's actually quite fun. Again, this enormous wheel. But driving it is very easy. I think people have this idea that old cars are difficult to drive. They don't have to be. Not at all. Got your Blaupunkt down there. Now the fifth speed is something that was only introduced later for this, the TX model, which has lots of vinyl and things everywhere, dark colours in here. This is meant to be the premium model. After this, the customers for this car split into two. They either went for the cheaper and slightly smaller Renault 14 or for the large, more luxurious Renault 20, which was not as quirky and fun as this. It's a lot more conventional. Apparently, if you really enjoyed what Renault tried to do with this and you wanted that in your next car, the people making it was Simca with the 1307 and the 1308 that they made. So conclusion time, classic twin test. Which is the better car, Peugeot 404 or Renault 16? It's the Renault 16 is the better car. It is more modern, it is easier to drive, it is more pleasant because of that fifth gear. It's a nice place to be. However, if I was buying one, which would I have? I'd have the Peugeot, because it was easy enough to drive. Neither are going to be setting any lap records or worrying anyone down Santa Pod anytime soon. And therefore, for me, in a classic car, I'd simply go with the one that I think I like the look of more. And that's the Peugeot. I appreciate what Renault tried to do with the styling of this car. I think it's very clever, very innovative, which is exactly what I want from French car companies. I think they're brilliant when they do that. When they try and be ordinary and mainstream, it's very disappointing. A lot more roll in this than that one. A lot more roll. But I appreciate and enjoy the classic styling of the Peugeot, and it's the one I take home. So there you go. I hope that's a definitive enough conclusion. Better car 16, my personal favourite, 404. Do you think that's me giving a medal to everyone? I don't think it is. But hey ho. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this rather unusual and different classic car twin test. The next feature to come from France, it's a big one. Been looking forward to this all week. Please comment below, subscribe if you haven't already, give us a like, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.